Hello everyone, my name is Olivia. Today I'm going to do one of my most requested topics, and it is telling you my favorite TV shows. Let's just get right into it because there's nothing else to say. I'm just gonna tell you my favorite TV shows and why I love them. So I split this up into categories because I write them down in categories in my phone anyway. So we're gonna start with my favorite genre of TV show, and that is crime TV shows. So my absolute favorite TV show of all time, which you probably already know the name of, is Peaky Blinders. Peaky Blinders is about a family called the Peaky Blinders, and they live in Birmingham, England during the 1920s, and they are going against other rival gangs during each season in order to gain notoriety and in order to expand their empire. So we follow our main character, Tommy Shelby, who is possibly my favorite character of all time. He is in charge of the Peaky Blinders, but he also is dealing with PTSD from returning home from World War I, and his brothers are also dealing with a lot of different issues as well. This show is the most visually pleasing show you will ever see. There are so many slow motion shots to really show off the grittiness and the coolness of Tommy Shelby and his brothers. The costumes are amazing as well. The set design is absolutely amazing. I really enjoy how each season is kind of its own story in the way that they each have their own different villain per season. I have seen Peaky Blinders I think 6 times now because I can rewatch it over and over again. There are currently 5 seasons out, and I think they're going to finish it on season 7, and I really like how they have a concrete end because I feel like showrunners tend to continue their series and stretch it out longer than it needs to, and they have an end goal in sight. So I'm very excited to see the end of Peaky Blinders because while I love it, I do want to see Tommy Shelby's downfall, and that is just like a very controversial thing to say because like he's my favorite character, right? But I do think he's a bad person. Everyone in this show is morally gray, and that's what's so interesting about it because you watch these people commit these crimes against these other rivals, but you're rooting for them because you want their empire to grow and you want them to become richer and to get the fortune that they think they deserve, but they're actually terrible people. It's such an interesting show to watch that I can write multiple essays about, and I just cannot recommend it enough. Every time I've recommended Peaky Blinders to someone, they have absolutely loved it, so it's a show that I feel like I can't go wrong with recommending, and it is my favorite show ever. A close second favorite show of all time for me is Mindhunter. This is a Netflix original following a character named Holden, and he helps create the behavioral science unit for the FBI. So the behavioral science unit is a unit where people dissect and really analyze the behaviors of criminals. So in order to do that, Holden and his partner Bill must go across the country to various locations to interview very famous serial killers in order to really get into the mind of a serial killer. And what's interesting about the show is that it's not only directed and created by David Fincher, who is a Virgo king, but he also goes really above and beyond in getting this really authentic view of the behavioral science unit. The interviews that Holden and Bill do with other serial killers are practically word for word what the actual serial killer said during interviews that took place back then. It's very much a back and forth between Holden and the serial killers that he talks to. I feel like if you're very interested in true crime, or if you're very interested in the psychology of a killer and what creates a killer, I feel like this is the show for you. This is also a show that I think I've seen 5 times now because it's endlessly rewatchable. It's very interesting. It's very gripping. It's a show that you need to pay attention to. It's a show that you cannot just scroll on your phone and not pay attention to while it's playing because you're going to miss very important dialogue. It's so well done. The shots are also amazing. It's very 70s and very retro, and I just think that David Fincher is an absolute genius. A new favorite show of mine that I can't stop talking about, and it's probably one of my all-time favorite shows now, is Hannibal. Hannibal is just about Hannibal Lecter and his new patient, Will Graham. Will Graham is a consultant for the FBI. He goes into these various crime scenes caused by this one serial killer, and he has the ability to reconstruct these crime scenes and really imagine them happen in his own mind, and you can guess that that takes a toll on a person. So he goes to see a therapist to help compartmentalize those visions that he has, and he goes to Hannibal Lecter. If you do not know who Hannibal Lecter is, he is a famous fictional cannibalist. Hannibal is one of, besides Peaky Blinders, one of the most visually stunning shows. The aesthetics of it is absolutely amazing. The costumes, the lighting, everything about this show is pure art. I watched this show, I think, all in 1 month, and I already want to rewatch it. I think it's one of the most well-crafted shows that I've seen in a while. It is just completely stunning. It is full of tension. It's also very dialogue heavy, like Mindhunter, because it does also have to deal a lot with psychology. So it's a lot of these characters sharing their feelings and thoughts to each other while they're also trying to figure out who this serial killer is. Hannibal is just such a fascinating character. I can analyze him for days along with Will Graham, and their relationship is very hot and cold. There are certain times where they hate each other and certain times where they love each other, and I just think that their relationship is one of the most complex and interesting relationships that I've ever seen on TV. It's very gory. I have seen things on Hannibal that have changed my life, and every time I see an episode, I'm like, how did this get approved to air on TV? Because it is just really gory. So I would keep that in mind if you want to see Hannibal. But like I said with Mindhunter, these are the types of shows that I really like. I really like shows that you can analyze and really break down and really dissect, and that is what Hannibal is along with Mindhunter. These are shows that will really make you think. They will keep you on the edge of your seat because these characters aren't really telling you their motives and their secrets, so you have to kind of go on a journey with them to find out what they want out of life. And the character development, beautiful. The relationships, beautiful. The visuals, beautiful. Everything is beautiful about Hannibal while also being completely horrifying and gross and just horrific. It is just the perfect blend of light and darkness. I cannot recommend it enough. My last crime show that I would highly recommend is La Casa de Papel. This is a show on Netflix. It is set in Spain. It follows a group of people who don't know each other but have teamed up together to rob the Spanish mint. So they go into this mint and take people hostage, and thus begins their whole entire scheme to create money and eventually escape this mint. So we follow the characters on the inside of the mint who are conducting this grand scheme, but we also follow a single character called El Profesor, and he is in charge of this whole group, and he is the mastermind behind this whole show. This show has a lot of paquete, which is just like ridiculous moments that would never happen. It's just a show where just when you think the characters are about to get caught by the police, they have a secret plan to get out of it. Just when you think that all hell is about to break loose and they're about to lose everything that they fought for, something happens and they're saved. So while it's kind of ridiculous in terms of their plan and how easily they're able to come up with plan B and C and D and E to get out of these situations, it's also just a really addicting show to watch. Now let's go into fantasy and sci-fi. I'm not the biggest fantasy and sci-fi fan, but there are a few shows that I do enjoy that are pretty basic, but I'm gonna tell you about them anyway. The first one is Game of Thrones. I feel like we all collectively as a fan base have made fun of Game of Thrones because the last season is horrendous. But let me tell you a little bit thing about Game of Thrones. These seasons leading up to it are phenomenal. This is one of the prettiest shows that I have ever seen in terms of set design, in terms of costumes, and it's also just one of the most complex shows that I've seen. There are so many different families and kingdoms fighting against each other. There's so much history layered underneath the plotline that you have to really remember in order to understand the Game of Thrones, and that's what makes it so fun. And I also just really enjoy the collective experience of Game of Thrones. This is one of the biggest shows of my lifetime, and I'm really glad that I was a part of it, and I got to see so many people come on to this fan base. I got to turn on so many friends to this show. So when we all saw that last season, it was explosive. People were sharing theories and memes and tweets on Twitter that just kind of brought us all together. And while we did hate the last season, and while it was rushed, and while it was so out of character, it was still so much fun, and that's what I love about Game of Thrones. It's a show that I would definitely re-watch again because I really appreciate the first couple of seasons and the direction that it went, and while the last couple of seasons went downhill, you still have to appreciate how big this show was. Game of Thrones made history, so I have to add it onto this list because I do appreciate it and what it did, and I appreciate the excitement that it put into me. Game of Thrones was like my Super Bowl for the last season. Every single episode, every single Sunday, I'm like, it's Game of Thrones Day, guys. It's Game of Thrones Day. We have to prepare for it, we have to cook dinner, we have to sit in front of the TV and just enjoy Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones was my Super Bowl, and that's something I'll never forget. Another favorite sci-fi show, which is very basic, but I'm going to tell you about it anyway, is Stranger Things. Stranger Things is just such a fun show, and it is set during the 80s, and it follows a group of friends. They are in middle school at the beginning of the show, and their friend Will disappears, and thus begins the concept of stranger things happening to this town. So it has a lot of realistic elements, it has a lot of 80s elements that brings a lot of nostalgia to the fan base. Even though I wasn't born in the 80s, it just gives me so much nostalgia in their costumes, in their homes, in the games that they play, in the references that they make. I do have to say that the world building isn't as good as like Peaky Blinders or Game of Thrones, where everything is really concrete and you can really understand the world. There are so many questions left unanswered for Stranger Things, but then again, the show is not finished. I just had to mention Stranger Things because every time I rewatch it, I get so happy and it makes me want to dress like 11, and this is also a show that I've seen I think like 5 times. And my last sci-fi show that I do want to recommend is Sense8. Sense8 is another Netflix original that is very confusing, and I feel like when you tell someone about the plot line, they're like, what? Because it is very difficult to explain the appeal of Sense8. But Sense8 is a global show following 8 characters, and they are all born at the same exact time, and they are psychologically and telepathically connected to each other. But they live all across the world, so they are able to feel each other's emotions. They are able to somewhat see each other's lives, and they are starting to wonder, how am I connected to all these different people? And how do I know their languages even though we all live in different countries? So all these characters come together as a universal threat tries to chase after them because they are kind of like a science experiment gone wrong. What makes Sense8 so appealing and really interesting is that it's set across the whole entire world. We have someone in Chicago, we have someone in London, we have someone in Mexico City, Berlin, Mumbai, Nairobi, Reykjavik, San Francisco, and Seoul. It is a global phenomenon of a show that I feel like is severely underrated on Netflix. It gets such vivid and wonderful representation from across the globe, but you also get to see these 8 characters from 8 different walks of life come together for a general cause, and that is to save each other. It's kind of like a storyline that shows you that even though you don't speak someone's language, and even though you may not have the same lifestyle, we all have the same thing, and that is empathy and sympathy for each other. So all these characters really connect on an emotional level because they're sharing each other's emotions, and it's just such a complex show. You will be confused for like the first 4 episodes. You're like, what is happening? But it's also just a beautiful show because you get to see so many different locations from around the world, and you get to see different languages spoken, different lifestyles that are shown, and it is just a beautiful show. If you want to see the world, I would watch Sense8. Now on to comedy shows. I'm not a comedy fan. I'm very picky when it comes to comedy. I have a very specific brand of comedy, and you might understand it when I tell you these shows. So the first show that I want to recommend is Bob's Burgers. Bob's Burgers is about a family, and they own a burger shop, and they are just trying to live life, make money, and just be happy. It's a really crass type of humor that I enjoy. The jokes are somewhat dry, but I enjoy that because that's how my humor is, and I just really enjoy Linda, I enjoy Louise, and I enjoy Tina. I feel like I am the embodiment of those three characters in one person. It's a show that you could just put on in the background and really enjoy, and it's a show that you don't have to watch in order. I just click random episodes and I watch them and I rewatch them, and they still make me laugh. Another comedy that is on Amazon Prime that I would highly recommend is The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Mrs. Maisel is also just like one of my top 5 favorite shows of all time. It is the reason why I now have short hair. It is the reason why I own this dress. Mrs. Maisel is about a woman named Mrs. Maisel, and she finds out that her husband cheated on her, and she has been so supportive of his comedy career that she thinks to herself, fuck, I'm better than him. I'm funnier than him. Why don't I become a comedian? She really takes a stand against her husband, against her family, against her friends, and really goes for this comedy career during the 50s. So we get to see Mrs. Maisel as she tries to rise in the ranks of this comedy society, while we also get to see her dealing with her family and dealing with her husband. So we get to see these really comedic moments between her really quirky family, and we get to see these very serious moments with her and her husband and the marital issues that they have. It's a very dialogue heavy show in terms of the fact that the dialogue very much brings the show to life. It's very fast paced. You always have to be paying attention to the lines that are being said, and it's a very subtle type of humor. This show is also beautifully filmed. It's such a bright and pastel and very oversaturated show. The costumes are amazing, and it's the perfect blend of everything you need and more to pick you up and put a smile on your face. I cannot recommend Mrs. Maisel enough. Now let's go on to horror. I only have one horror show that is my favorite, but I guess you could also consider Hannibal a horror show if you want to. And the show is The Haunting of Hill House. I have seen Hill House I think 4 times already, because it is just a rewatchable show for me. Hill House is about a family who moves to Hill House. They are the Crane family. And something happens in Hill House in their childhood that causes this family to fall apart. So we follow the Crane family when they initially move to Hill House, when their sons and daughters are children, and we get to follow them in the present when these sons and daughters are adults. And we get to see how a family can be so close initially and how they can break apart and really be torn apart by one single moment. But I'm describing Hill House kind of like a family drama, but it's a really horrifying show. Like, the house is haunted, it's full of ghosts and full of demons, and it's a show that you really have to pay attention to. Quite literally, in every scene set in the house, you see a demon or a ghost behind these characters, and they don't know it. And that's what makes the show so much more horrifying. Once you notice that element of the show, you're always going to be looking at the background. You're always going to be trying to look for ghosts. I think this is one of the most well-written shows in terms of characters, because you really get to study these characters and you really get to journey along with them from their childhood to their adulthood, and you get to see the complexities of a family and grief and how it can stay with you for decades. Hill House is beautifully shot. The cinematography is something that I can write essays about and talk about for hours upon hours. That one episode only has 5 takes. Do you know how difficult that is? It's such a stunning show. It's stunning while also being horrifying, but it is definitely one of my favorite shows of all time. We're getting there. We're getting towards the end. We're almost there. Now let's talk about my favorite animated shows. I have 3 that I want to talk about, and the first one is a no-brainer, Avatar: The Last Airbender. I used to watch this show. I think it came out every Saturday morning or Sunday morning. But I used to come down in my little PJs when I was little. I used to park myself onto the couch, turn on Avatar every weekend, and watch a new episode. And I watched it from the beginning, from the first episode all the way to the end. Every single character is wonderful and relatable and hilarious, and this show packs so much into it. People initially think it's a children's show, but I feel like if you were to watch it from any age, you would get a lesson out of Avatar, because it talks about spirituality, it talks about grief, it talks about anger, it talks about honor, it talks about war, it talks about peace, it talks about justice. It talks about so many things that can relate to so many different aspects of your life. And Avatar can teach you so much because you're growing up alongside Aang, who is the new Avatar, and he is learning how to be an Avatar and be a leader of the world and bend all four elements. In case you do not know, Avatar is about a world where people are able to bend the four elements. So we have airbenders, we have waterbenders, we have firebenders, and we have earthbenders. This show has so much heart to it, and it also has so much humor to it, and that's what I love about it. It is a really fun show that will take you on a journey that you'll never forget, and I am so grateful that I grew up alongside Avatar and I was able to watch it every single weekend and really connect with these characters. And in case you are wondering, I would be a firebender, and my favorite character is Zuko. But the character that I think is one of the most interesting and underrated is Azula. Another favorite animated show is Summer Camp Island. I feel like this show is so underrated. It's a Cartoon Network show about these two characters, one named Oscar and one named Hedgehog, and they go to Summer Camp Island for the summer. It's basically a magical, cute little island where things are alive. Like, this frame would be alive, my phone would be alive, and the leaders of this summer camp island are teenage witches. It is just such a pure show. It's a show that you can definitely watch out of order, I think, but I mean, watch it in order. But it is just such a pure show. The art style is really pastel and really cute and whimsical, and it is just such a magical show. It puts such a big smile onto my face, and whenever I need a pick-me-up, I just rewatch an episode of Summer Camp Island, and it just makes me feel so happy, and I love it. I feel like if you need a feel-good show, if you need something along the lines of Steven Universe in terms of the mystical, magical, and whimsical feelings that it makes you feel, I would tell you to watch Summer Camp Island. And the last show that I want to recommend that is one of my favorites that I've spoken about a lot is We Bare Bears. We Bare Bears follow 3 bears who live in San Francisco in a cave. And this is like a show like Bob's Burgers in terms of the fact that you can watch it out of order. These episodes don't really interconnect, but I would tell you to watch it in order. It is basically about these 3 bears getting into shenanigans, meeting up with their friends, and just exploring San Francisco and their cave and the woods that they live in. And it is just such a pure show. It is another show that puts a smile onto my face that I would highly recommend if you're looking for a pick-me-up, and I just cannot recommend it enough. I am done speaking now. I am tired. I have been here for a while, gushing about my favorite shows. So, here's what I want you to do. I want you to comment your favorite shows of all time and tell me some show recommendations for shows that you think would be up my alley. Because I just shared with you all my favorite shows and some of my favorite aspects of shows. So now it's your turn to tell me shows that you think I would like. So thank you so much for watching this video. I know it's very long-winded and very long, but I hope you enjoyed learning about my favorite shows of all time. And I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you want to help support me, you can follow me on Instagram at StoriesForCoffee. You can subscribe here onto my channel. You can like this video. You could share it with your friends. But either way, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you soon. Bye!